Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of The Standard is the Standard. And no, that's not Lance Williams next to me. Lance is under the weather. He called in sick. So we went to the bullpen, got the right hand going for those that are watching the playoff baseball going on right now. And we're bringing in Bryan Anthony Davis. And I texted Bryan earlier today and said, Bryan, it's going to be just like the old days. The old school hangover where it's just Bryan and Jeff. Bryan, how are you this evening? What's going on?
You know what? I miss those days. That was so much fun. And when I got the call, I'm like, oh yeah, I am in. It's Jeff and Bryan. The boys are back in town, baby. So no, feeling great. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's good to have you back. Just the two of us. It's been a while. The Steelers are going into their bye week and they're coming off a big win. And I don't want to get too much into like what we'll talk about in the preview tomorrow night with Dave. But I got to be honest, what are your thoughts on just the momentum the Steelers have right now? Is there any at all? Or do you think that maybe there is actually something to coming off of a road win, going into the bye week, having the Dolphins coming to Heinz Field on Monday Night Football after?
You know, Jeff, conventional wisdom tells you that they had no business winning that game when you have a third string quarterback coming in and starting a game who has never started an NFL game in his life. In fact, where he has come from, the fact that you're on the West Coast and that team doesn't win. So there's got to be some excitement in that locker room based on how they won that game. And I'm not talking about the second half collapse, which really wasn't a collapse to me. It's just kind of the way that whole thing shaped up. But for me, it was just the fact that they banded together, and this is a team that as they go, they're going to get stronger because what did we talk about the last couple of years? Double T's. We said team turmoil, and there's no shred of team turmoil whatsoever with this Pittsburgh Steelers team in 2019. They're kind of bonded together. They've got that band of brothers thing going. They feel like they're united as one. They're going to live and die together. So I kind of feel like there is momentum going into the bye, especially with the team that they have right after the bye. So they can probably see something on the horizon, and they know the plans that they've been making.
You know, I can't get out of my head, and we have a couple of people that are joining us now in the live chat. We appreciate all those people that are chiming in, just saying hello. I can't get out of my head the fact that, number one, they've played a very tough schedule early on. And the teams that they've lost to, outside of the New England, we'll talk about the New England Patriots. They're undefeated. They haven't lost a game yet. They lost to the Seattle Seahawks. They're, 5-1, Bryan? They lost to the San Francisco 49ers, who are undefeated. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens, who are 4-2. Say what you want about that record, but they're 4-2. As Lance said on his, I said it last week, you are what your record says you are. And in that case, they're 4-2. So those games that they lost outside of the Patriots game, they lost to a combined 9 points. I honestly feel that this team can beat anybody. Maybe outside of New England in Gillette, which we would, if they get that far, then the Steelers season has turned out to be really awesome. Let me just say that. But honestly, for me, I feel like this team can hang with anybody. So yeah, the Dolphins are coming up, but I think that they just got a taste of what they're really capable of. And that is they can run the football. They can impose their will. And my goodness, Bryan, this defense is looking good, aren't they?
They're closing in on that top 10, and they really are statistically. And the big statistic for me is points per game. And, you know, when we talk about the statistic, this is the statistic that got me into trouble back in July when I dubbed the phrase touchdown zone because I was talking about how important points per game were. But, you know, they're closing in with after the Miami game. There's a possibility that they could be under 20 points a game, closing in on the top 10 in that category. So that's a pretty big deal to me. They are also going up against a Miami team that's averaging 55 yards on the ground. But we're really not talking about Miami right now. What we're talking about is where this team should be and where they are. And, you know, what we did an exercise back in July when we did Camp Confidential. I put together the article for all of BTSC with predicting every single game of the schedule. And at this point, now I had them at 11-5 total, but at this particular point, I had them at 3-3. So that is one game off of where they actually are.
Which game were you off? Not to interrupt, but which game were you off?
Well, it's funny because I had them losing to Baltimore, New England.
You had them beating Seattle.
I had them beating Seattle and San Francisco. And you know what? They kind of beat Seattle. They kind of beat San Francisco, and they kind of beat Baltimore. They blew it, but they had them in their sights.
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying there. But there were opportunities in each and every one of those games. Huge opportunity to beat Baltimore, Juju fumbles. Huge opportunity to beat San Francisco, Connor fumbles. The Seattle game was a referee nightmare.
That was also the game Ben got hurt. So
yeah, and the game Ben got hurt. So that's kind of what happened. But I'm also going to go back to something too. I keep on talking about Miami coming up. If they beat Miami, they're 3-4. And what's significant about 3-4 in Pittsburgh Steelers history?
3-4. That's the defense they play.
Well, 3-4 defense, but one of the greatest 3-4 Steeler teams of all time. One of our favorite years ever was 1995. They're at 3-4, and they go on to Super Bowl 30. So that's something interesting to see. All I'm saying about this team, maybe I'm glasses almost full guy, but I'm just thinking that this team has something special brewing. And we've seen from Mike Tomlin teams a lot that in the second half, when November rolls around, December rolls around, they kind of pull off a string of 5 and 6. We saw, you and I were doing the Hangover together in 2016, and they were at 4-5, and we were trying to keep everybody from off of the ledge. They just lost to Dallas in that crazy game, and you saw what happened.
Yeah.
You saw what happened. They put it together, and next thing you know, they're in the AFC Championship game. So stranger things have happened, but the one thing is Ben Roethlisberger's not there. So how can they rally with these quarterbacks? And that's going to be the key to it.
Let's hold on to that thought for a second, because Felicia, longtime viewer of the show, she puts $2 in the tip jar. And if you don't know what the tip jar is, the bottom of your screen where it says you can post a comment to the right is a little money sign. If you click that money sign, you can donate any amount of money to the program. And obviously, we appreciate all the generosity. She puts $2 in and says, "Hey, Jeff, I see that Mason," she's referring to Mason Rudolph, "was officially cleared today." And then a couple other people chimed in with, "I heard that Mason was cleared prior to the game." Here's the thing. This was a misunderstanding from the get. And it was, I honestly blame Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette based on the fact that he, I think, jumped the gun when he reported that the Mason Rudolph was cleared prior to the Chargers game and that the Steelers held him out because they had built a game plan around Devlin Hodges, a la Dennis Dixon and Ben Roethlisberger. What year was that, Brian? 2009?
Yes, exactly. That was a December 1st game, I believe, Sunday Night Football.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the game he was concussed against Kansas City, I believe, and then it was the week leading after that. So anyways, that doesn't matter. So he wasn't cleared, and it got to the point where so many people had been writing articles and tweeting about this that the public relations director, Burt Lawton, had to send out a message saying he is still in the protocol and the media is not allowed to interview him. Now, that's interesting for a lot of reasons, but here's the most interesting, because when a player is in the NFL concussion protocol, they are not permitted to speak to the media. That is an NFL policy, not a Pittsburgh Steelers policy. With that said, notice when he was actually done. Like they said, he's released. It was this evening, Wednesday evening. What is interesting about that is the fact that they don't have any more practices until Monday. So there's no media availability. There's no media sessions. They're basically, in my opinion, could he have been cleared Sunday? Possibly. I think they wanted to hold off because they did have a plan for Hodges. He had gotten most of the reps. He had gotten almost all the practice snaps. So they said, hey, here's the thing. We're just going to go with Duck. Hope he can win the game. He did. Mason's cleared, but we're going to wait until after the media can get to you. We're going to give you a whole week to recover. Hopefully you don't have to answer a million questions about the hit by Earl Thomas, which now will be two and a half weeks afterwards. That's my own theory on that, Brian, is that they helped him out a little bit from avoiding the media this week by waiting until Wednesday evening, but he is officially out of the concussion protocol. And as Mike Tomlin said today during his media availability, at this point, it's all quote unquote semantics. So, Brian, what are your thoughts on Mason Rudolph? And I should say, Mason Rudolph is the quarterback. Anyone that thinks the Duck and there's a controversy, Mike Tomlin put that to bed right away. He said that Mason Rudolph's the quarterback when he's healthy. What are your thoughts?
You know what? I'm glad he came out and said that, because I know there's a lot of people riding this win and saying that we Duck won that game. I've got a buddy that's just all over this, going, Duck throws a crisper ball. He was 15 for 20. I'm like, wait a second. There's kind of a hitch. He did a great job, but if they don't have a 14-0 cushion, that's a different ball game, and you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen as far as when he's forced to go downfield, because a couple times he went downfield, it wasn't pretty. We saw the interception. The first play of the game, I'm glad they tried it.
Gosh, Juju was wide open.
Juju was gone. That would have been a touchdown, and he missed it. And so you can't get on Juju for that. And it was just a situation, but they played the right game, Jeff. They went ahead and did everything they could to protect this guy. And James Conner did everything he could to protect this guy. His rushing stats don't look good, but it doesn't matter, because it's what he's doing on the field, breaking those tackles, catching those passes, look like a juggernaut in the passing game. When you have 40-some yards rushing, but 119 total, that's all I care about. So he was really producing. He was the MVP of that offense. Duck won that game. He's the winning quarterback, but he got a lot of help.
Well, here's what I love. And everyone has their favorite in this battle of Rudolph versus Hodges. Everyone has the person that they're pulling for. You have the Duck Dynasty people that think that he's the guy that should be the quarterback moving forward. I just loved how people belittled Mason Rudolph for checking the ball down and having these short little dump offs. And then when Devlin Hodges goes out and does it on Sunday Night Football, he has the same exact thing. He's checking it down. He's not really going downfield that much. And everyone says it's the best thing ever. Great. He's great. He's great. He's doing the same thing that Rudolph did that you just criticized him for. I think that Mason Rudolph is just a more polished quarterback. I think he's more NFL ready. I'm not saying that Devlin Hodges is not, going to be a good quarterback. I'm not going to say that Devlin Hodges couldn't be a really good backup quarterback. I see a lot of Charlie Batch in Devlin Hodges, because remember when Batch was younger, he was mobile and he was someone that could come in and win you a football game. He didn't have the strongest arm ever, but he was a good timing thrower. Brian, you may disagree with that, but I think he has a little C Batch in him.
You know what? I like that comparison. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
If I could piggyback on something you said.
Sure. Yeah.
One thing in this whole Mason versus Duck, I'm going to put quotations up, quarterback controversy, if there is one, but Randy Fichtner really did not help out Mason Rudolph with that junk about, well, he had guys open downfield. He just wasn't finding them. Like, come on. I believe that was the San Francisco game, but he also saw where he did go downfield. I mean, and that was his first start. And I didn't like the criticism from Fichtner. That really didn't help in this whole situation now, because he's not coming out and criticizing Devlin Hodges at all, because he was the man who put together this entire game plan to go ahead with short passes with Rudolph. But he did try to go downfield a whole lot more than Duck Hodges ever did.
And I think Ali Howard, who is a mainstay in our live chat, he said it best. I think we found, and we being Steeler fans, are solid number 2 and number 3 quarterbacks. Neither has shown number 1 qualities yet. I agree with that 100%. I'm a big Mason Rudolph fan. I think that, there's absolute potential there. But as of right now, we haven't seen it yet. You agree, Brian?
Yeah. When we really had the time, though, to see it?
We will have time, though. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to have the rest of this season to prove himself and to possibly prove that he might be in the discussion for more playing time, or what we hope that's an issue, because that means that he's playing well and they're winning football games. So let's get to the title of this episode, and that essentially is, what do the Steelers need to do, maybe that they're not doing now, that can catapult them to a postseason berth? I don't care how they get in. Win the division, wild card, don't care. As long as you get into the dance, punch your ticket to the dance. You never know what can happen. 2005 is a very good model to go by in that regard. So, Bryan, if you look at this Steelers team, can be offense, defense, doesn't matter. Where are the areas that you say, you know what, this is something that's going to have to improve if they want to win games in a row? They haven't done that yet. So stack some wins together, get on a streak, and potentially make a play for the playoffs.
The defense is doing everything that they need to be doing right now, with the only problem being Stephon Tuitt being out. But I'm still fine with who's coming in to spell him. So I need to go on the other side of the ball. And what they really need to do more than anything, I don't think it's the quarterback play as much as it is the rushing offense, and that includes the offensive line. But this needs to be more of a ball control team. Set up the pass with the run. Like I said, I don't want to be hypocritical. I was just saying that I'm fine with, I don't care where he's getting the yards as long as James Conner is getting the yards. But you also still need to control it a little bit more with them moving the chains on the ground. Now, they showed that they can do that a little bit more with Benny Snell Jr. coming in as well as James Conner, because they had a over 100-yard rushing game, and that is without using the Wildcat. So they did a really good job doing that. So what really helped back in 2004 when Ben had shackles on him, he showed a great passing ability, but he did a lot of the short stuff early, and he was more of a game manager back then. But they had the running game with Deuce Staley and Jerome Bettis controlling a lot of that game and setting up the pass so much more. So we really need to see Snell at this point and Conner moving the chains so much more, and those offensive linemen have got to open the holes for them more and more.
You bring up 2004, and I think that's a really good comparison in regards to the quarterback play, because when Ben Roethlisberger was drafted, he was a big arm quarterback from Miami of Ohio, and he was considered to be very rough around the edges. The one thing that Ben always did well was the deep ball. He's always been a good deep ball thrower, and that's why in recent years, when his deep ball, maybe it's been his elbow because they said it's been hurting him for a long time, has kind of been a little bit it's a little off. We'll just put it that way. A little off. And you think about some of those plays that he would have where they would dink and dunk, run, and then they would take their shots down the field. And that's where I got to find it in the live chat. Someone said it. I want to try to bring it up. Here we go. Tight ends targets will not help that much. The offense needs to be more vertical. This offense does need to be more vertical. If you think about the jet sweeps, you think about their running, I think you have to understand that the Steelers are going to have to take more shots downfield this year, based on the fact that if not, they're just going to crowd the box. They're just going to stop the run. They're going to basically say, we dare you. We dare you to go over the top. We dare Mason Rudolph or Devlin Hodges to actually throw the ball down the field. And until they do that, nothing will ever change. And so that's something they did in 2004. It wasn't often. I think back to the Halloween game, I believe. No, was it Halloween? It was around Thanksgiving. Plexico Burress caught that beautiful touchdown pass against the Patriots. It was the
Halloween.
Yes.
I was there.
Beautiful in the end zone. They had an ability to get over top. Now they have to find that guy and who that guy is going to be. But go ahead. Do you agree with that sentiment that they need to get vertical?
Yeah, and I think going back to my point as well, I think being able to run the ball and adding in the fact going vertical goes hand in hand a little bit. So that will open up. It's going to open up things both ways.
Yeah.
So I feel you there. But that Halloween game, I remember it, and in fact, I was right next to the Plexico watching those deep balls. I mean, I had great sightline for that, and that was just, I have great memories of that. That's the day that I actually high-fived Jesus. There's a guy in Sports Illustrated that wore a Jesus costume that year, had the beard and everything, and I high-fived him in the parking lot. He was drinking a beer, which I've never seen. But
what kind of beer was it?
I think it was a Coors Light, if I remember.
Not an icy light. That's not a Steeler Jesus then.
Yeah, not a Yinzer Jesus. But no, I mean, you're exactly right. They really need to get vertical, but they also need to open up that running game to help them get vertical, and vice versa.
Yeah, and so I think that, on the Steelers preview last week, leading up to the Chargers game, I talked about the defense, and I said that this defense is going to need to carry this offense. And what I meant by that is that turnovers are great, and they've been taking the ball away at a tremendous clip. In fact, 15 turnovers after week 6 ties their 2018 season total, if I am correct, and I believe I am, it's astounding that it was that bad in 2018, and it's that good so far in 2019. But what I said was that, my goodness, they need to turn some of these into touchdowns. And what do? The fumble, Devin Bush has the wherewithal to pick it up. He has the athleticism to get in the end zone, putting points on the board. Because let's be honest, we've seen it how many times so far this year when Ben Roethlisberger hasn't been in the lineup, and technically even when he has been in the lineup, you get the key turnover, and it just turns into a field goal, or it just turns into we flip the field and we're punting the ball back. Getting touchdowns off these turnovers are crucial, and I think that this defense, if they can continue on taking the ball away, but actually turning some of these into points, will be absolutely huge. So I look at also capitalizing on opportunities. I mean, we saw Minkah Fitzpatrick drop an easy interception. We saw Joe Hayden drop an easy interception a couple games ago. Anthony Chickalo dropped an easy interception. This team could have 18 takeaways already, and they only have 15. And I shouldn't say only, because I believe they're in second behind only New England in terms of takeaways. So they can do more, and it's asking a lot. But go back to 2004. What did Ben have? Running game, which you mentioned, and good defense. And I think this is a really good defense. I really do think this is a good defense. I just think that they're coming into their own. They might have, I think Miami is a perfect game for them to kind of get acclimated to life without Tuitt. Tyson Alualu is going to have to step up his game. They signed LT Walton back, so he knows the system. Hasn't played football in 10 months, but he knows the system. I think that it's absolutely one of those situations where the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is primed to take the next step. They already get the sacks. They already get the takeaways. Put points on the board. So anything else, Bryan, that you can think of that you would say they can do this better to help them make the playoffs?
You know what? I would also, I saw this on the live chat saying that this doesn't help them get vertical. I want to see more tight end play too. And I think we're going to see that. But as far as everything else goes, cleaning everything up is really what has to happen. And the big thing for me is continuing to have an innovative game plan that is not part of the Ben Roethlisberger repertoire. You need to have innovative game plans for whoever your quarterback is, and not just dust off the stuff that you had with Ben over the past few years. So I want to see a Mason Rudolph plan to continue to take advantage of his strengths. If Duck Hodges is in there, I want to see a Duck Hodges game plan, and that's what they need to do.
Yeah, and a lot of pressure on Randy Fichtner. Let's be honest, Keith Butler, and this is something that Lance talked about in one of his episodes. We talked about it on the Standard as a standard coming into this season when you had so many number 1 draft picks, and then you trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. You basically are saying you have no excuses anymore. Like Keith Butler, you have no excuses. If you can't manipulate these phenomenally talented athletes that were all unbelievably high draft picks and put them into a good defense, then you, sir, deserve to be fired. And so far, Bryan, would you agree that he's done his job?
Nobody wants him fired right now. No one's really talking about firing
somebody. There is somebody.
Yeah. But it's like, but then you have me leading the pitchforks and torches against Randy Fichtner right now. So but the onus has switched. It switched from defense to offense.
Exactly. So now Randy Fiedner has the pressure on him with no Ben Roethlisberger. He has to be creative. He is going to have to almost have a game-by-game game plan, which sounds counterintuitive, but it literally is going to be, look, here's the opponent this week. Here's what they do well. We need a game plan best for that team. And when I say that out loud, boy, does that sound dumb. Shouldn't that be the case every week, no matter who your quarterback is? Yet haven't we seen it time and time again where they would just go out onto the field and say, well, we've got Ben Roethlisberger. We're just going to do what we do. You know, that's what I used to call the Dan Bilesma approach of coaching. I don't care what everyone else does. I'm just going to do what we do, and we'll do it better and win. Well, it doesn't always work out that way. And so I think Randy Fiedner is slowly learning that, you know what? We can game plan week to week, and we can find the way. The Cincinnati game was a huge step in the right direction for me because they said we want our wide receivers and or running backs on their linebackers in space. And what they did was the jet sweeps, the Wildcat, and it worked. Now, they ran the Wildcat again against Baltimore. That was a mistake. They were ready for it. They were planned and prepared for it. But still, baby steps. Bye week should be good. I think they'll come out prepared, hopefully, for the second half. Now, let's go through some questions. Since Lance was not able to join us, I said, Lance, do you have anything that you think we should talk about? And, of course, Lance put on his producer hat, and he started sending me about 50,000 text messages of topics that we should discuss. We will not go through all of them, but I will pick a few that we'll talk about. And here's the first one. How big of a loss is Stephon Tuitt to this team moving forward, especially the defense? Brian, go ahead.
It's a huge loss because of what he has been doing, all the penetration he's been getting. But, and there's a big but here, if you are going to lose a spot, if you have to take a starter off of this team on any position group, you have somebody like Tyson Alualu and Javon Hargrave who could move over, that I have greater confidence in those guys than I have if you lose a starting corner, or if you lose a starting outside linebacker, or if you lose, James Conner at this point.
You don't trust Artie Burns after what you saw in Sunday Night Football?
No, everyone's telling me, oh yeah, he had a good game. No, I thought at the beginning of the game he was getting torched, and I thought right away, oh, here we go. So maybe yeah. I'm not Mr. X's and O's, and I'm never going to, say that I am.
You never claim to be. You never claim to be.
But I just really, I'm sorry, I just saw someone called me MAD for mad instead of bad. But I don't believe in Artie Burns anymore. Yeah. And there's really nothing that I saw the other day that really made me believe in him, that I'm fine with him stepping in for one of those guys.
Well, going back to the question at hand, which was about Stephon Tuitt, in my opinion, Stephon Tuitt wasn't playing at a Pro Bowl level. He was playing at an all-pro level, in my opinion. He was having a phenomenal season. And Tyson Alualu, I was very happy with how I saw him play against Los Angeles on Sunday night. But at the same time, I want to see it done over time. The Steelers' defense so far this year has done a good, or I should say a better job of rotating players in to keep him fresh. We've seen it both at the defensive end position. We've seen definitely at the outside linebacker position. Here's a name of a guy that's going to have a golden opportunity now. You probably know who I'm going to say. With Stephon Tuitt being out, Javon Hargrave is going to have a golden opportunity to earn himself some money, whether it's with the Steelers or whether it's as a free agent, because I have a feeling they're going to put him in that rotation at defensive end to play a little bit in that spot. Let's say if Alualu needs a breather and they're not running a nose tackle, they can put him in that end position on those sub packages. And I think that if he goes out there and plays well, the Steelers not only would be smart to keep him around, but if not, he'll get paid elsewhere. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that exactly. I mentioned him earlier along with Alualu, that those guys are going to get opportunities, and I still contend I don't want to lose to it, but it's reality. He is gone for the rest of the season. And I just think that you have more depth on the defensive line than you have anywhere else on that defense. with that being said, this also gives Bugs an opportunity. And I don't think LT Walton is really that bad either, and they brought him back. So, I mean, I think you have some guys that you could plug and play. They're getting very good play out of the front seven, but that front three is doing very well for them. So I'm actually encouraged. I hate the loss. I hate losing that guy, but that's the place you could afford to so much more is all I'm trying to say.
I'll agree with you there. Okay, next question via Lance Williams. I want to say from the grave or something like that.
It is October, so
there you go. From the grave, Lance Williams writes, what unit has to improve the most for the Steelers to make the playoffs? So think about one position group that needs to improve the most for the team to make the playoffs. I have mine in my head, but you ready? You want me to go?
You go.
Okay, I'm going to say the offensive line. I think the offensive line has shown some progress, but they're nowhere near what everyone thought going into this season. Everyone saw a dominant force. They can impose their will on the opposition, and everything else starts and stems from the offensive line: pass protection, run blocking, giving whoever the quarterback is enough time is clearly, obviously, it's as Mike Tomlin would say, obviously, is paramount. Offensive line play can be better, and it's going to have to be better if this team's going to turn it around and make a push. What do you say, Bryan?
Jeff, what you're missing here is the fact that you're 100% correct, because it is the offensive line. I mean, that's exactly where I was going to. A lot of people, Dave Schofield has disagreed with me on this. I think the loss of Mike Munchak actually shows up a lot more here, which you don't think on the surface, you really think it shouldn't, with the Pro Bowl, with 3 Pro Bowlers on that line, but also with Munchak being a run game coordinator, as he was the past couple of years as well. He had a lot of hats on that offense. I just think that was something that I really didn't think they were going to lose that much there with Sean Surratt stepping in, but they went down a peg. And so they really need to get that back up. But if I had to go to another position group, I need to see more out of the wide receivers.
Yeah, that's an easy one, I think, to go to, because you have a free agent, you have a free agent acquisition like Dante Moncrief, who it took him 6 weeks to finally make a positive play for the team. And it was a good catch. Kudos to him for a first down. But Mason, a lot of people in the live chat are saying that the O-line is not bad. Or look, in certain areas, they're still very good. In pass protection, they're still very good. But in terms of run blocking specifically, they're not very good. They were better on Sunday Night Football. But even in short yardage situations, I feel like this offensive line has taken a gigantic step backwards. People say all the time, why would you throw on 3rd and 1? Have you seen them try to run it on 3rd and 1? I mean, it's not pretty. When it goes bigs on bigs, it's the Steelers are getting pushed backwards. That's not what we saw in the past. Maybe that's something that is the new norm, because some of these guys like Pouncey and Foster and even DeCastro are getting up there in age. I think they're still better. I still think they can kind of regain some of that 2018, so we'll see. All right, let's go to the question that I thought was the most intriguing. Here's what it was. From the grave, Lance Williams from the grave. What would the Steelers' record be? And I want to hear what people think in the live chat. So if you're in the live chat right now, I want to see what you think. You'll see the question. What would the Steelers' record be if Ben Roethlisberger were healthy? Think about that, Bryan.
Well, I actually already have.
Well, what do you have?
Well, you know what I told you about the exercise I did earlier with projecting them at 3-3. But what I really saw out of this year, going into it with Ben struggling early because of the elbow, but we're saying if he didn't have those injuries, I could probably see a 4-2 team.
Okay, now you did it correctly. Congratulate, as a teacher, you did it correctly. You did the exercise correctly. For those in the live chat that are putting up 16 games, no, just where we are right now. 6 games at the bye week. Where would you have the Steelers record? So you said what, 4-2? Is that what you said, Bryan?
4-2.
Okay. Well, he lost his first 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we don't know what would have happened at the end of that Seattle game.
True.
Because he did drive them down the field for a score. at the end of the half. So there were some opportunities there. I could actually see them still going into San Francisco and losing. That was just a weird game because it's on the West Coast. Still Cincinnati, you're going to win that game. The Baltimore game, they had every chance to win that game. The Los Angeles game, you could play the same card that if Los Angeles was healthy, they might not win that game. So you just don't know. But at this point, of what I've seen, just the eye test, they really could be a 5-1 team, even with Ben gone. But typically, right now, I think they should be a 4-2 team, no matter who the quarterback is.
I agree with the 4-2 mark. Obviously, he lost to New England in week 1. But like San Francisco, some of those turnovers deep in their own end, I got to think that some of those would be turned into touchdowns with Roethlisberger, and that would have turned the tide in that game. And so, but like you said, he has always struggled on the West Coast. So who knows if the game plan would have been the same against Los Angeles and the Chargers, then it would be with Devlin Hodges in terms of we're just going to run and try to get it to James Conner in space and try to grind the clock out and things like that. So keep that in mind as well. But I agree, 4-2. So if you're in the live chat, I see a lot of people saying 5-1. Let's see, 3-3, 5-1, a lot of 4-2s. A lot of Dallas 2-4. Yeesh, that's not good. 5-1, not. Some people are 2-3. 2-3. Okay, here he's okay. I see what he did there. All right. So Bryan, here's my question for you. How do you spend the bye week? The bye week comes and it's kind of depressing because you kind of go through the week and it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You're getting all jacked up for the game that week. What do you do on bye week Sunday? Anything in particular? Do you go to Bed Bath & Beyond with the wife and kids?
You took my line. I was gonna do the whole Frank the Tank thing. We had a nice little Saturday plan. A little Bed Bath & Beyond, Home Depot, maybe. Oh God,
enough time.
Fire up the Red Dragon, dude. It's tough. I mean, I hate the bye week, and in fact, this is how much I hate the bye week. As much as you want them to get the bye, we have Golden Girls Monopoly. That's actually in my house, so I really don't have a problem with that. Because my wife is a huge Golden Girls fan. The whole family is. So I would actually play that. But
you're such a Blanche. No, just.
Hey, if you're gonna be somebody, be a Blanche. At least go out smiling. But you know what? So even when they're in the playoffs, I hate the week they're off. I'm glad they're off because you don't want them to play the extra game. It's just like that's not right. It's football season, and look, they need this bye week. The bye week couldn't have come at a better time. But I want Steeler football. That's why we do this. So I'm gonna spend it. I think. I have a big another weekend in the woods because it seems like with scouts, I'm in the woods a lot. It's Scouttober for me. So but I'll be back on Sunday and I'll probably be recovering from the weekend and going shopping with my wife and doing whatever she wants to do because it's she gives me Sundays. I've lost college football in my life because I want to spend time with my family on Saturdays, and they give me Sundays.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. And for me, everyone that watches the show regularly or listens to the podcast know that by all means, I have a big family. We have 5 kids. And so my wife is very tolerant of the fact that the Steelers take up a large part of my life. They have, I have to publish 10, or not me personally, but I have to make sure that 10 articles get published a day. I have to make sure that all the people that visit BehindTheSteelCurtain.com have their open threads. But typically on the bye week, I actually, I try to devote that whole weekend to the family, whether it's doing stuff around the house, some stuff I'd put off to get done. Maybe I'll take my son golfing and I'll be on the golf course at some point, maybe on Sunday, and I'll check the games. But it also goes into the play that for me, the there's only one division game this week because the Browns are on break too. So I mean, it's there's two division games. So the Bengals, which if you want to count them, but the Ravens they travel to play the Seahawks at 4:25. So that actually might work out well. If I go golfing in earlier, I would be back in time for the Ravens game. But I have Sunday ticket, but this is a weekend I normally don't use it because I just sometimes I have to get away too. You know what I mean? So it's one of those situations. But yeah, it's everyone does it different, and some people sit down and watch carefree football. And I would do that if my life planned out a little different. But as of right now, no, that's not me. So what I'd like to do right now is we have about 15 or so minutes left in the show, and so I want to answer some questions from the live chat. And if you want to use the super chat feature, you can. You don't have to. But there's so many times, and Bryan can attest to this with the hangover and on the preview, where my gosh, there's so many people that are viewing it live and they're in the live chat and they're asking questions, and we just can't answer them all. And we're trying to have a dialogue together, and people get angry if we're not answering their questions. So I figured, hey, let's take the last chunk of this show and let's devote it to questions from those in the live chat. So if you have questions, anyone, chime into the live chat and we'll get those answered by all means. While we're waiting, I'll ask you, Bryan, what do you think about the Ravens going to see the Seattle Seahawks this Sunday? How do you think that plays out?
Wow, I think that is going to be a fantastic game because I really like what Baltimore is doing. And when I say like, I hate it, but as somebody that's following football, they're doing it right on offense and it's working. And everybody keeps saying that this guy's going to fall apart. Lamar Jackson is not going to last the season, and so far he is. And I saw a stat where he's actually has better numbers than Michael Vick early in his career too. So it's really interesting to see what he's doing. But Seattle to me is a team that they haven't been beating up on teams, but they've been escaping. And Russell Wilson looks like an MVP candidate. And I will call this. I'll call out Dave Schofield a little more than you, Jeff. But back in week 2, when I went ahead and said the one guy that you definitely play this weekend in fantasy football during that preview game was Russell Wilson, because he is having a magical season right now. If you had a vote on MVP, I think he gets the vote. So it's in Seattle. If this game was in Baltimore, I would actually pick the Ravens, but in Seattle, and I don't care that Cincinnati almost beat Seattle week 1. Seattle has it together, and that is going to be a tough place for Baltimore to go and win. So, and really the next 2 weeks with Baltimore playing Seattle and New England, the Steelers could possibly see themselves in a lot better shape.
Absolutely. They did just lose their tight end, Dillingsley. The Seahawks did, and I wonder if they're wishing they still had Nick Vannett on their team.
You know what? Can I say something about that?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
That 5th round pick is kind of cursed. Because think about it. Because the Steelers trade Josh Dobbs for a 5th round pick, and then Ben Roethlisberger goes out. And they're like, oh, gosh, we just traded away a guy that we could have for depth. So they go ahead and trade that 5th round pick that they get to Seattle for a tight end. Then all of a sudden, Will Disley goes out, and they really would love to have Nick Vannett back.
Yeah.
So that 5th round pick, if they go ahead and trade that for somebody, whoever gets it is going to lose a player in that position group.
All right, we have some questions. Are you ready to do some rapid fire here?
I am.
Before we get started, Frank V, who's been on our channel a lot, he says, you guys do a great job. Best podcast and YouTube channel for Steelers information. Frank, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you want to thank us the most, it's not through the super chat feature. It's by hitting the like button on these videos on YouTube and giving us good reviews and ratings on our podcast platforms. That's what helps us the most. Trust me. All right. Cree asks, what is it going to take for our defense to stop tight ends? What are your thoughts there, Bryan?
Minkah Fitzpatrick is already doing a little bit more to stop it. They're getting Sutton into the game as well. I know some people think he's still on the smaller side, but that nickel corner, if he can go ahead and step up and you get help from the safety, you're going to do a little bit better against tight ends.
Well, when you don't have Artie Burns in there and Steven Nelson when he was in there, it's definitely cut down on that. It doesn't require Minka Fitzpatrick to cover as much. So, all right, here we go. Steelers fan number 74. Jeff or Bryan, what's your explanation for 18 of 32 teams in the league having a losing record? Bryan, go ahead.
Parity's a crazy thing. And you're seeing a lot more teams that are going to be 3-3 or 2-4 because they're matching up so well. And especially when you see on the back end with teams that are drafting so much, like teams like Cleveland and Jacksonville that are drafting better and better, they're going to start winning some games that you could pencil them in to lose a whole lot more. So there's just not a lot of top end teams right now that are going to be undefeated. You're going to see a lot more parity and a lot more in the mix where the toss-ups every single week.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, Ron says, Jeff and Bryan, do you think Benny Snell will be a big part of the offense moving forward?
You need to have two running backs. With Jalen Samuels not there, you will be seeing him used a whole heck of a lot, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities. In fact, you're going to start hearing whispers that, well, maybe they should have Snell in there more and more. Cool your jets on that. But Snell's going to be used.
Totally disagree. I think that Snell will only be used sparingly. I think they're going to go to we're going to ride James Conner till the wheels fall off philosophy. The only reason he played a lot against Los Angeles was because Conner left with a quad. He'll be in there situationally or when Conner needs a break, but I think they're going to ride James Conner every single down, including third down, just like they used to with Mr. Butt Naked and Robbed, Mr. Le'Veon Bell. I think they're going to follow that same path. Benny Snell will play. I don't think he'll have a huge role. Here's an interesting question from Steve. He says, who finishes with more rushing yards, Lamar Jackson or James Conner? It's kind of embarrassing that they're asking this.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson at this point.
He's amazing. You can't watch. I can't stand the team, can't stand the fan base, but you can't not marvel at what Lamar Jackson does with the football in his hands.
You know what they're averaging? The team is averaging through 6 games on the ground.
It's over 200 yards, isn't it?
It's 201 a game.
Wow. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well, there you go. Lamar Jackson. That seems to be where the safe money is. Steelers fan frenzy with Flip says, will Rudy, meaning Mason Rudolph, be on a long leash when he returns?
Yeah, I kind of think he will. I think Mike Tomlin coming out today and saying he's the starter when he comes back. You need to give a guy like this confidence and remember that he has only started 2 games in the NFL as far as that goes, and he played in another one. So he's only played 3 games. So he's played 3.5 games really in the NFL so far. He's got to get his feet under him, and you've got to give this guy an opportunity to learn and thrive.
Absolutely. I think that he's going to get better. They're going to have to be understanding that, what are you going to go to? You have to have a long leash, because if you took him out and put Hodges in, it's going to be the same scenario as a young quarterback, inexperienced, going to make mistakes. All right, Valley Ford says, what do the Steelers need to do with Moncrief? Cut to preserve the 3rd round comp pick or try and get some value out of him? I'll answer this first, Bryan. In my opinion, you don't need to make a decision yet. You have until week 10 until you have to decide whether you want to keep him or cut him. At this point in time, James Washington's hurt, so you keep him. If James Washington comes back and is healthy and you know you're not going to utilize Moncrief that much, you cut him. You get that 3rd round comp pick because you need that 3rd round pick next year. And, you see what happens. I doubt he gets picked up. If you have to pick him up again later, you can. I'm not sure how that impacts the compensatory equation. That's a question for Dave Schofield. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree 100%. And if it comes down to it and you are having depth problems at wide receiver, Do not cut off your nose to spite your face just to go ahead and have a third round pick next year. I know that's a valuable pick, especially with what you've given away, but you're playing for now. And if they're making a move and they need to have a wide receiver, an experienced wide receiver, even though he's made some mistakes, you're going to have a guy in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to answer a couple of these real quick, Brian. Give you a little bit of a break. Who's the starting quarterback on Monday night versus the Dolphins? Asked Joey Franklin. Mike Tomlin said today that will be Mason Rudolph as long as he's healthy. He was released from the protocol today, so it will be Mason Rudolph. Someone else asked any update on James Washington's injury. That was a shoulder injury. Mike Tomlin said he could be limited as next week as they prepare for the Miami Dolphins, but he's not ruling him out as a potential to play. He said the same for people like TJ Watt and James Conner, who both left the Chargers game early. Okay, here's a question from Big Rush. Do either of you miss the old AFC Central? Yeah, we didn't win Super Bowls, but that was fun football. The AFC Central, Brian, go ahead and rattle off those teams who used to be. Obviously, it was the Steelers, it was the Browns, it was the Bengals, the Houston Oilers, and even the Titans were in the Central right before they switched.
Well, Houston became the Titans,
right?
And they were in the Central, and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes, because Baltimore didn't exist for the Central. Maybe they did for a few years.
Yeah, Baltimore in '96 when they came in, they were in the Central all the way until 2002 because that AFC North, that system that we have now, came into existence in the 2002 season.
Yeah, I was there 102. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I missed that. There was some hard. There was some hard-nosed football, even those old school Jaguars games. Okay, here's a question from Reginald. He says, "Do you think Mike Hilton has earned a long-term contract this season so far?"
Kind of think he has. I don't know whether that's it's going to be financially possible, but he's played. He bet on himself, and he's played well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a long-term deal. They still have control over him. And with Cameron Sutton playing well, you might view him as expendable. I would have to wait and see how Justin Lane looks. Because if Justin Lane proves valuable, why shell out money if you have Cameron Sutton who can step in and do exactly what Mike Hilton can do, possibly cheaper? So there you go. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. From Ron, Jeff and Brian, do you think Deontay Johnson takes a big step the rest of the year? I'll go ahead and answer this one first. I think that he's already taken a big step. We said, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we say that like 3 touchdowns, we'd be pleased with him for his rookie season?
Yeah, 3 touchdowns, and I believe it was 20 catches. I think I upped it to about 30 at one point, that if he has over 30, that's an amazing season. He really can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster, and his media availability this week was just glowing about Deontay Johnson, from his route running to his preparation, all good signs for him. Let's get away from the football. Frank sends us in another direction. He says, pick 2, pizza, cheeseburger, tacos, or wings. What 2 are you picking?
I want them all, but if I have to pick 2, pizza's definitely number 1 for me. And I guess I would go back to cheese. No, I'll go wings.
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
So you're going pizza and wings? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I've become more of a wing guy.
Okay. I'll go with pizza, and I love a good cheeseburger. Love a good cheeseburger. Absolutely. So for me, here's a good question. Do you think that Juju Smith-Schuster will finally have a big game? He's had moments, but he hasn't had a big game yet as a number 1. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I still think he is a number 1 receiver, but he has not had the opportunities. My gosh, if he would have had an opportunity to catch that ball at the first play of the Los Angeles game, he would have gone the distance on that. That's just what Juju does. He's still leading the team. He has 380 some yards. And a lot of them have been on long plays. He doesn't have the reception total that he's had, but he is doing everything he can. And as far as a leader on that team, and he's doing everything he can to get open. It's just the thing, can a quarterback find him?
Right. No, I mean, it's Juju is not at this stage of his career someone that is just going to be able to automatically create for himself. He's getting there, and I think he's had a good season, but with the unbalanced quarterback play, you mentioned how most of his yards have come off of chunk plays. I just don't. I hope he turns it around. I think he'll have a big game. I'm not sure when, but right when you think that a defense is going to say, you know what, Smith Schuster's not going to beat us, we're going to put him on single coverage. That'll be when he absolutely lights it up. Here's from Gyro says, do you actually think that if the Steelers have an offseason, Tomlin will be traded this offseason? Do you think that's even a possibility?
That's a pipe dream for people that want the picks, especially the picks they lost with Minka Fitzpatrick. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't either. I don't. Washington might try. I wouldn't put it past them, but I don't think they would offer anything close to what the Steelers would expect if they were even entertaining that idea, which I don't think they will. Here's one that's been bothering me a little bit. Ron, he says, Jeff, Bryan, do you think Rudolph and Washington will start to hook up more downfield? This is something I thought would have happened already, and it just hasn't. It just hasn't, and it's been a bummer because I always thought that Cowboy connection. No, not Steel Cowboys. That's awful.
That's my new fantasy football name. Steel Cowboys. What's wrong with
Sounds like you're a Cowboys fan when you say that. I don't like that.
Cowboy Connection is the same thing.
No, it's not.
You at least have steel in there. You have something steel.
If you said Steeler Cowboys, that's still bad.
No, but you've Cowboy Connection is all Cowboy.
I like that. I like
it's all Cowboy.
That's true. But everyone knows they went to Oklahoma State. They're the Cowboys, so there you go.
But Steel Cowboys means, hey, we've got the Pittsburgh, and I don't think they're Cowboys, but they're made of steel. They're tough.
Okay, answer the question. What's going on with Washington and Rudolph?
Yeah. You know what? These guys will be able to hook up more and more. Hey, that play was beautiful that Mason Rudolph got hurt on. That was to Washington. He had a scramble. He found Washington. So there were shades of that old connection coming up. It's almost an instinct. They're going to get it going more and more.
Yeah, I hope. This is some of the aspects that, for me, this team is so tough to predict. And Bryan knows from FanDuel experience that I love to play Steelers. I will go 3-4 deep in terms of how I'm going to put my lineup together in terms of having Pittsburgh Steelers on my lineup. This year, they've killed me because I can't predict anything with this team. And Bryan, you said to sit James Conner the last 2 weeks, and that's not a bad thing. He finally burned you in week 6. I'm glad he did. I said to sit Juju Smith-Schuster 1 week. That was I think the San Francisco week. He ends up catching that 76-yard touchdown and makes me look like an idiot. I can't pinpoint this team offensively at all. There's no consistency. They went from you start Ben, you start Mr. Third and Fifth, you start butt naked and Rob, you're guaranteed to get probably at least 50 points out of those three, if not a lot more. And now, Bryan, what the heck, man? Like, this Steelers team, you can't figure them out.
No, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. The whole apple cart was upset when Ben Roethlisberger went down. But I've got a fantasy football role, and it's simple. It's like, I don't care if I lose a game as long as the Steelers win. So if they win and I end up losing fantasy football, I have no problem with that. So if I'm in a situation, even in FanDuel, that somebody has Steelers against me and I don't have them, and I'm looking at their lineup and they have Juju in there, and Juju torches me for 30 points and the other guy gets them and puts me out of the money, I'm fine with that. Good. I mean, I could win my $9 another week. I can win my $20 another week. I don't care about that. All I care about are wins in the NFL win column, not fantasy.
That's true. So, all right, Bryan, we're at the 1 hour mark almost. What do you have to say for the Steeler fans out there that might be watching as they head into the bye week?
You know what? It's going to sound crazy, but they're turning a corner. Kind of, they have more confidence than we do, and that's because we're not in the locker room. So they are at a position right now where they're not happy, but they've got a plan, and they know that if they keep following the plan, that it is going to go ahead and come into fruition. I tell my bosses that in the business world. I'm like, look, I've got a plan. We've got to wait for it to come together. And then when it comes together, I'm like, I told you. And that's what I'm waiting from them. I'm waiting for them to say, we told you. But the thing is, they believe. We just need to be made to believe, and we're going to see it happen. There's going to be, like I said earlier, there's always a Mike Tomlin stretch of 4 or 5 wins in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season. I think that could possibly come and come in weird places, because we're looking at the schedule right now. You're like, oh, they have the Rams coming up. Oh no. But the Rams are not. They're a 3-3 team right now, and they're kind of struggling a little bit. They don't know who they are right now with their running game. There's other teams like that too. So just believe that they know a whole heck of a lot more than we do, and just keep the faith, because this team is not going to be the team that's drafting at number 5 and losing that fifth overall pick to the Dolphins. It's not going to happen. They're going to reel off some wins, and they're going to salvage some part of this season.
Yeah, I think you said it best there. I think that's a good way to put it. Here's the thing to keep in mind, folks, is that everything Bryan just said is correct. It might be frustrating at times. You know, there's going to be days, there's going to be plays, there's going to be quarters and series that are just downright awful. Because let's be honest, without Roethlisberger and without that offensive line, it's a very young football team. It's a very young football team. And so there's going to be some issues, but Bryan put it best. I feel like they're turning the corner. So very good. Bryan, this has been a ton of fun. I appreciate you and your time, and you're not scheduled to be on here, but it was good to get just the two of us back on the show.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is you wrote "Seems Like Old Times" today in the text, and yeah, it definitely does, because I remember when it was you and I and just a couple other writers on the site, and that was it. We were holding down the fort as far as what was going on, and of course Lance was here too as well. But it seems we were just doing the shows, and now it's nice to see how we've grown. But it's like we just put our throwback headphones on.
we used to be on Blog Talk Radio getting calls from Vito Mankin from New Jersey, and Ken from Ken from Jersey, Brooklyn,
and Melvin.
No, Melvin, but he's from Texas. But what about Brooklyn? Who's from Brooklyn?
Oh gosh, Bryce
from Brooklyn. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's
there. Ken from New Jersey will be in the live chat sometimes, and so it's cool. And then we've obviously Melvin's been in as well, but it's been a long time, and it's crazy that we now have almost 4,100 subscribers on YouTube. And our podcast platform is really gaining steam and momentum. So we thank you all for being a part of this program, for being a part of our community, whether it's here in the live chat, whether it's on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We hope you're checking out everything. Like if you're listening to podcasts and you have never checked out the website, check out the website. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. You have Bryan, myself, Dave, a bunch of other writers giving their opinions, news, everything. So make sure you check out all that stuff. So with that said, thank you for watching. Myself and maybe Lance will rise from the dead for next week's Standard is the Standard and be here to talk about the upcoming game with the Miami Dolphins. Until then, enjoy those Steelers games. And as Lance would always say, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.